Hello everyone, this is Reach of the Sky and I'm back with another tank video. This time it's the Russian tank destroyers. Now if you've watched any of my previous videos you know that my format is usually going through a tank series by order of date. That's mostly possible because tanks are organised in order of date anyway, because it just so happens that each tank in that series is slightly better, and it was introduced later on in the war. But the Russian tank destroyer line is different, and they're not organised in order of introduction. So unfortunately I'm not going to be able to do the video with a single series of tanks like with the T-34s. I'm going to have to put all the TDs into one video because there's no continuity with the Russian tank destroyers. There's multiple series and different models and different tanks, so I'm going to have to go through in order of battle rating. So first of all is the ZIS-30, Tier 1, battle rating 1.7. This was an emergency response to the German invasion of Russia in 1941. It was hastily built, like a number of Russian projects in mid to late 1941, designed to deal with the masses of German panzers. It was created by mating a 57mm anti-tank gun with the chassis of a T-20 artillery tractor. Now obviously this isn't a very sturdy vehicle, it's very fragile and it's quite unstable, but it's also quite fast and compact. It presented a small target. This gun is a ZIS-2, it's capable of penetrating 95mm of armour at 500 meters with standard AP, so at the time of its introduction this vehicle had a very powerful gun. And in early tiers you can really do a lot of damage, you can do a lot of one-hitting, but it's quite fragile, so you've got to be careful. Next is the Su-76M, Tier 2, battle rating 2.3. This is based on a lengthened and widened T-70 chassis, mounting a 76mm gun. This was the second most produced Russian armoured vehicle of the war, behind the T-34. It's very popular with its crews because it's very simple to operate and reliable, robust. The 76M was the main production variant. The original model had engine problems. There was a twin engine system with one engine driving each track, and that was very complicated with the driver, so they simplified that in the M model. The 76mm ZIS-3 is capable of penetrating 74mm armour at 500 meters. Now that's less than the 57mm on the ZIS-30, but the shell is much heavier with more kinetic energy, and the explosive charge is almost twice as large as that on the 57mm, so when you do penetrate you're going to do a lot more damage. Once again, the chassis the gun's mounted on is quite fragile, but it's nippy, fast. Next is the Su-122, battle rating 3.3. This was a response to the success of the Sturmgeschütz, German self-propelled guns. The Russians took the idea of a large self-propelled howitzer, so they placed a 122mm M30S on the chassis of a T-34. This was the first self-propelled gun based on the T-34. It was designed for attacking emplacements, infantry, entrenched enemies, but the high explosive shell proved large enough to cripple armoured vehicles, including tanks. The turret of the T-34 was removed, which made production cheaper and simpler, and it was replaced with a one-piece casemate for the crew. Next is the Su-85, Tier 3, battle rating 4.0. This was again the T-34 chassis modified to mount the 85mm D5S, which could penetrate 105mm of armour at 500 meters, so this was a tiger killer. Turretless single-piece hull. This allowed the same chassis, unmodified, to mount a larger gun than the T-34's turret. And the D5S is obviously much more powerful than the 76. That's the benefits of using a single-piece superstructure system, but obviously there's no 360-degree traverse like with the turret. That's the cost of mounting a larger gun. Next is the Su-152, battle rating 4.7. This is based on the KV-1S chassis, which was a faster, lighter version of the KV-1. It mounts a 152mm ML20S. This was nicknamed the Zveroboy, or Beast Hunter, as its shell was powerful enough to knock out the heaviest German tanks, including Tigers, Panthers, and Ferdinands. Although a number of Elephants were claimed to be destroyed at Kursk, only one was reported to be completely destroyed, and the rest were eventually repaired and recrewed. This also uses a single piece superstructure with a 75mm turret front and 60 on the sides. The mandolet is around 125mm thick. Next is the Su-85M. This is a stopgap measure while the Russians were waiting for the Su-100's gun to be available. So when the Russians realised the 100mm wasn't ready, they had to put that on hold and upgrade their already available Su-85. So this is the 85M. It's got the newer mandolet and superstructure, which was going to be used on the Su-100. The front armour is increased to 75 from 45 on the original Su-85. The superstructure itself is slightly larger, which made the crew's job easier. The gun could be worked easier. This is reflected in game. There's a slight increase in rate of fire. The gun itself is identical, but there's a very small increase in rate of fire. And there's a new cupola based on the T-34-85's cupola. Next is the Su-100, Tier 4, battle rating 6.0. This mounts the very impressive 100mm D10S, capable of penetrating 157mm at 500 meters, without armor-piercing composite rigid. This is just standard AP stats. It's identical to the 85M, but with the new larger gun. So as I said, the 100mm arrival was delayed, which resulted in the stopgap 85M being produced. Next is the ISU-122, the first one here, battle rating 6.0, same as the Su-100. This is essentially identical to the ISU-152, except for the fact that the 152mm was in short supply, so the chassis was modified to instead take the 122mm A19S. Obviously the caliber's smaller, so the high explosive filling was less powerful, it would do less damage, but the muzzle velocity was increased, which allowed improved armor penetration. The 122S, battle rating 6.3, is identical except for the change in gun, which is now a D25S. The A19 used a completely manual breech system, which made the rate of fire very slow, but the D25 introduced a semi-automatic breech system, which improved the rate of fire. As you can see here, there's quite a large difference, 25 seconds and 37.1. Finally is the ISU-152. This mounted the original ML20S as seen on the Su-152, but instead mounted on the larger, better protected IS chassis. Obviously the gun lacks penetration, but it makes up for that in raw explosive power, just like with the Su-122 and Su-152. So that's Russian tank destroyers. Thank you for watching. See you soon.